what so-called minor prophets in Judaism. I don't think they receive revelation. Being a prophet is not just about receiving revelation. It can be about proclaiming God's truth to the people, calling people to justice, calling people to remembering God. That's not necessarily based on unique revelation given to them.
That's good. So let's say, assume one of these later prophets who don't have a dedicated script. So he would depend on Torah. It's supposed to be half.
Yeah, exactly. They've been given the Torah as the law.
If the Torah was changed before him, then how he can depend on a Torah which is altered?
Well, indeed.
Somehow he should receive something correct from God to be able to.
Well, we see the Quran, which is the final revelation.
Talking about these prophets like Jeremiah or Isaiah or Suleiman. I mean.
So what is your point? Sorry, we're describing what happened, but you said there's a problem or something, or
no, the point is
what is the?
How we can?
I'm going to look up that passage in Jeremiah, by the way. It's quite interesting. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so the time. Let's say Jesus. Jesus have received, or he has now the correct Torah with him, because as per Quran, it says وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَالتَّوْرَاةَ وَالْإِنْجِيلَ. Right. So God teach Jesus الكتاب والحكمة والتوراة والإنجيل.
Okay.
So at one point, the prophets have to have the correct Torah to be able to teach. And Jesus, as per the New Testament, he was sitting with the scholars of Jews.
But that may be the case, but the prophets before him, I'm not sure they did have the correct Torah. Jeremiah himself, I'm still trying to find the passage, says that the Torah had been corrupted by the Jewish scribes.
It was written by Israel, right? By the Torah when it was lost with the destruction of the temple. It was written at Israel.
Oh, it's Jeremiah 8, not Jeremiah 7. Sorry, Jeremiah 8:8. Let me just find the passage. Depending on the translation, this is Jeremiah says, how can you say we are wise and the law of the Lord is with us? The law of the Lord is the commandments, obviously, when in fact the false pen of the scribes has made it into a lie. They basically altered the word of God. It doesn't say to what extent, but so the idea of the Torah being corrupted is there in the Old Testament, funnily enough. I'm not sure I really get your point, to be honest, but I can only perhaps describe some of the things I know. I don't quite see what there is a problem. The problem is the Torah is corrupted, but for Muslims, obviously, the Quran describes itself in the 5th surah, I think it's verse 48, around about there, as the criterion by which we judge the scriptures of the people of the book. So what the Quran, what agrees with the Quran is false, and what is true, and what is false is determined by what disagrees with the Quran. So the idea, for example, in the Torah we have that God needed to rest on the seventh day, is clearly contradicted in the Quran, which says God doesn't need to rest. There's almost a deliberate attempt to correct the error in the current Torah we have, and there are a lot, and the way the prophets are portrayed, they're portrayed often in the Bible as very immoral characters, even serious sinners. That's corrected in the Quran as well. So, and there are many other examples like that. Okay, sorry, I wasn't able to.
No, I just was eerily in the background. My father is a big fan of yours.
Oh, both of you? Yes, whole family. Okay. All we need now is the mother.
The mother is close by. No.
She's close by. Cool. Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
I just want to ask one question.
What do you find is the biggest challenge or not challenge maybe, but the main reason or reasons that you find convince Christians into Islam?
Oh, that's interesting.
And maybe that's a
yeah, I mean, I don't really know why I think a lot of people are very impressed with aspects of the deen of the Muslim life which have been lost in Christianity. So I've been told a lot of women, Western women, they're attracted to the family values, the understanding of the family in Islam, the role of the men and women, for example, the respect and dignity accorded to women in Islam, because most converts are women, actually, not men, in the West, in America and in Europe. I know, it's extraordinary. They're often attracted by that. And the fact that the religion's not been changed, whereas Christianity is perceived by many people to constantly catching up with the latest Western secular fashions, you know, whether it be LGBT or whatever, you know, and the need to conform to whatever the BBC or Fox News is saying. And Islam doesn't do that. We don't have any, obviously, authority to change the deen of God. So that's another attraction. I think arguments, I don't know if really they're often that compelling, you know. No, some Muslim women I've heard, converts, have said they like the way Islam understands Jesus, rather than the Christian understanding, as someone who had to die and be sacrificed so we could be forgiven. And this is, for a lot of people, quite repellent, because why can't God forgive people, you know, which is true. So I think those are some of the reasons I've heard why. I mean, they're common for men as well, but I think women particularly like the family, and they've seen Muslim families and how they work, and the dignity according to women, and how they're very successful as family units, and the extended family as well. Anyway, lots of reasons like that, I think.
Fair enough.
But you need to ask them, really.
I appreciate it's a difficult question as well. I mean, it's based on
it is.
What you've seen around.
Yeah. But the thing about I have spoken to sisters, one or two of them are scholars now, Muslim scholars, and they've reported some of those things in their own research, in their own academic research. So it's not just hearsay. There is some research behind it.
Another question, if you don't mind.
Oh, well.
Separate to that, but when how do I, on one hand, reconcile learning from the Quran, like myself, just like reflecting, learning, introspecting myself with my limited knowledge, but still reflecting, on one hand, with not knowing the context of each ayah on the other? Because how much context do I need to have in order to reflect?
I think well, it depends why you're reading it. I think for some verses, like the 112th surah, Surah Ikhlas, you don't really need to know a lot of context. But if you do know context, boy, it's mind-blowing stuff. I mean, that surah itself, so with the 112th surah. But it talks about the oneness of God, that He's not begotten, nor does He beget, and there is none like unto Him. I mean, Western scholars have looked at this surah, and they've unpacked a lot of information even that they have, which I didn't know about. How they think there's a deliberate refutation of the Christian idea of the Trinity, of the idea that Jesus is begotten, for example, and so it's a very sophisticated piece of kind of theology for them. Although it's sophisticated for us, but they see depths in it, perhaps that we don't often see. So I mean, that's added depth, but I think I get the impression that the Quran does assume some knowledge of the biblical stories. In fact, it does reference them. So I think at the time of the Prophet, there was some awareness of the stories of the Israelites, for example. And so when the Quran speaks, it's addressing these stories and other stories to teach a lesson, a spiritual lesson, or to correct a story as well. I mentioned God needing a rest in the Bible. The Quran refutes that. The idea of Jesus being crucified, again, you didn't know anything about Christianity, that might seem a bit odd anyway, but so I think a good modern Quran translation, like Abdul Halim's, for example, would give you some introductory words anyway.
Abdul Halim.
Yeah, he's a professor at SOAS. His translation of the Quran is published by Oxford University Press. It tends to be the one that they use at universities because it's a very good translation. At the beginning of each surah, there is just a few introductory words to give it's a Mecca or Medina surah, and some other historical context.
Thank you. That's
But I'm not saying you need that necessarily to benefit from it. I think depending on,
Right. I think this is just so I'm not a student of knowledge in any way. I don't have that context. I don't have that research in my brain. So when I read, I'm reading without context, and I'm just maybe some of me is a little worried that I misunderstand, or.
Well, you need a good tafsir then. You need I mean, there's something called the Study Quran, published by HarperCollins. Now, this is controversial because some of the authors seem to advocate perennialism, for example, but it's the idea that all religions basically are pretty good vehicles for salvation. So if you're a good Christian, you go to heaven. You're a good Jew, you go to heaven. Although the authors are all Muslims, this is not Islamic. But I don't mean to put, I'm just stating that up front because I get criticised for advocating a work that has this doctrine. I'm not advocating it for that. But apart from its defects, the Study Quran, by definition, has its translation of the Quran to English, but it has an awful lot of commentary taken from the classical tafsir. And it draws on a huge range of writers. So if you really want big context in Islamic history, that's going to give it to you big time. but any tafsir, I mean, obviously famously Ibn Kathir's, I mean, they're very famous commentaries that exist anyway. I mean, you know about these. But that one, the Study Quran, is just in English by mostly American academics, all of whom are Muslims. But there are one or two issues with it nonetheless.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much.
I guess that's it. Thank you. Nice to talk to you, mate. Nice to meet you. And nice to take care. Salam.
Andy and Catherine. Yeah, Andy. Catherine is Chinese Catholic. She came from home. They came to Islam, and that's why, as I mentioned to you, that Islam, basically, we believe actually the one who sent Jesus, peace be upon him, is the creator of the heavens and the earth. We believe in God, the one who sent Jesus, and we believe in peace be upon him to be a prophet and messenger. We don't put Jesus above his level to worship him, to make him as God. And as well, we don't belittle his status like the Jews will say he's a bastard with no one. We say he's a prophet sent by God. We believe in his miraculous birth, as that compared that God has created Jesus just like he has created Adam. God has became things principles for us as Muslims. And that's why what happened throughout the time, throughout the time that the Christianity being evolved and changed, things being added, things being deducted, and that's what the problem is. Where the current Christianity actually is not the teaching of Jesus.